5 important elements any plan must have for it to succeed. These are things you cannot negotiate about. These are things you cannot compromise with. These are things you cannot neglect. These 5 things are the ones that are going to determine whether you're going to succeed or not in any area of human endeavor. Welcome to class. Yesterday, the 15th of February 2023, during our regular evening classes, Franchise and Licensing Institute, while I was trying to offload the proverb of the day, if you have ever attended any of our events or any of our classes, you're quite conversant that the first segment in any class, in any event, is proverb of the day. The wisdom that informed proverb of the day is we are trying to seek for that which is accurate. And the person we are relying upon is the most successful man that has ever walked the planet. Incidentally, this gentleman doubles up as the most successful, the most wealthiest, the most intelligent person, the wisest person that has ever walked the earth. Solomon, the son of David, the king of Jerusalem. And yesterday we were unpacking Proverb 15 verse 22. We read from the William Tyndale version. And Proverb 15:22 says, "Plans fail when there is no counsel, but with many advisers they succeed." On the face value of this promise, or on the face value of this proverb, is a one simple fact that there is no success in anything in life that cannot be traced back to a plan. There is no success in career that you cannot trace back to a plan, a sound plan. There is no success in business that you cannot trace back to a sound plan. There is no success in your personal life, in your family, that you cannot trace back to a sound plan. The irony here is everyone seems to have some plan of sort. If you walk if you approach 5-10 people randomly and you ask, do you have a plan? 9 out of 10 of us will tell you, yes, I do have a plan. So what is the distinguishing factor between a plan and a sound plan? And in this class, I want us just to adopt that a sound plan is that plan that has high chances for success. A plan is just that thing that you're working on that has no chance of success. So as we were unpacking this proverb yesterday, we discovered that for any plan to work, any plan requires 5 important elements. These important elements are not negotiable. These important elements are a must. In order for you to succeed in anything where you have exerted yourself, in anything where you have given yourself as this is my life's industry, enterprise, this is my area of industry, this is what I wish to direct my creativity, direct my ambitions, direct my passions, then you cannot afford to neglect on any of this. There is a huge difference between planning and having a sound plan. This is contrary to what we commonly hear from people who say that if you're not planning, you're planning to fail. You might have a plan, but a plan is not guaranteed to succeed if that plan is not considering these 5 elements. So if we were just to take a common working definition for what a plan is a plan is a task at hand. Similarly, that's what a plan is. And a plan is a task at hand that is carefully considered. So in order for this task at hand to be considered as a plan, it must be carefully considered. So what is the first element that any task at hand must have? There must be a clear task at hand. We must know, in order for us to qualify that aspect of consideration, we have said that every plan must have 3 ingredients in order for it to qualify as a task, and in order for it to qualify as a task in consideration. So any plan must have: what are we doing? What am I doing? What have I chosen to do as an individual? What have I chosen to do as a group, as a family, as a business? So the initial part of every plan is the task. But in order for the task to qualify as a task must meet these 3 ingredients. What are we doing? That is at a corporate level. What am I doing at an individual level? What am I doing about my career? What am I doing with my business? What am I doing with my relationships? It's very important. That is the first ingredient. The second ingredient is, why am I doing it? It is said that if you ever approach an individual who knows why, such an individual will always be the boss. If you ever approach an individual and they know how to do a matter, such an individual will always have a job. So in order for us to be drivers of our plans, it is very important that we must factor the why we are doing it. So we are starting with what are we doing? We are progressing to why are we doing it? And then the last ingredient is, how are we doing it? To what extent? To what level are we doing it? The first important element in any plan is that, what am I doing? And we just don't stop at what am I doing. We go further and we ask ourselves, in order for this thing that we have set at hand to qualify as a plan, then what are the measures? What are the thresholds that we must meet? Those thresholds form part of these 3 ingredients. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And how am I doing it? To what level? That is the first element. The second element of any successful plan is, there must be a clear time frame in which the task at hand must be performed. We cannot divorce a task with the time. Actually, what makes it to be considered a task is the time implication attached to it. Any plan that you want, anything that you're doing, you must have a carefully set up time that we are going to do such and such within this period. We are going to do such and such within this period. Actually, in life, everything has a time frame. Any aspect, any line or any area of endeavor must have a clearly set time frame. There is a time frame for a seed to be sowed. That seed must die. There is a time frame for it to sprout. Every aspect of life must have a time frame. If you're just deliberate with your planning, if you place a demand on yourself, then you'll begin to appreciate the time implication in your plan. And a time implication is not a suggestion. A time implication is one of those key ingredients, key elements that all of us must meet. That this thing must be performed, it must be performed to this extent at this time frame. It's very important. So the first one was, what are we doing? Do we have clarity of what we are doing? Do we have that clear picture of what we wish to do? After that clarity, then the second thing that we need to qualify is, at what time frame am I going to do it? The third element is, there must be an acceptable standard to meet if the task is to be deemed performed. One of those things that we have, particularly in our times, and this is one of those great challenges that we face, particularly in the people that appear at the marketplace, is most of us just tend to do things haphazardly. Most of us don't put a lot of consideration. And I understand there is this aspect of, if you want to, if you think of doing something for a longer time, then time eats up. But in all that, there is a consideration that all of us must make, and the consideration is this: what is the acceptable standards that this performance must comply with? And that acceptable standard must be agreeable with every person involved. If it's you at an individual level, you must agree with yourself. You must have congruence. Congruence is harmony with yourself, that I will do this thing to this extent. This is the level that I've set for myself. This is the level that I've set for my business. This is the level that I've set for my operations. You must have peace, and you must be very deliberate. One of those things that you cannot neglect at an individual level is you must place a burden on yourself to constantly put limits, put thresholds. One of those things that we cannot avoid is the thresholds, the acceptable limits. At an individual level, you must have congruence, you must have peace. At corporate level, this is something that constantly we need to communicate. This is something that we constantly need to review. If you have people you're working with, this is something that constantly we need to review. At a corporate level, we need to have time frames. We need to have time frames that are set towards deliverables. That, hey, do we remember these are still the limited, the extent to which we wish to pursue such and such a task. It's very important that we do not neglect. We cannot compromise on standards. We cannot compromise on standards. What actually distinguishes performed task and that which was never performed are the standards we have set. It's very important. The fourth element is there must be a consideration to take in place unique resource. Any plan must touch a resource, because we are living on the plane of transaction. There is a nothing for nothing. Anything that you wish to be part of will cost you something. Anything that you wish to achieve and realize will cost you something. Some of the cost that we must pay, some of the transactions, some of the bargain that we must make is, what do I need to give in this duration of time to meet this level of standard if this task is to be performed? So when we are looking at resource, we are looking at a very significant component in all that we are doing. The weakness is most of us, we only gravitate toward the conversation of resource to money relevance. What is liquid? The conversation around resource is wider than money. The consideration around resource is, whom do I need that in order for this work to be performed? Is this work, will it be performed by me as an individual? Am I sufficient to perform this task? And where you find inadequacy in your sufficiency, then we must consider, at what levels of engagement will I bring on other people to help me perform this task? What are those considerations that I must make at an individual level if some people are to come on board and to help me perform this task? When we are talking of resource, we are talking of expertise. We are talking of ideas, we are talking of skill set, we are talking of experience, we are talking of goodwill, we are talking of access, we are talking of relationships. Sometimes we are talking of tangible things, we are talking of equipment. But in order for us to understand that if we are to perform a task to a certain consideration level of standard that we have set for ourselves, then we cannot divorce, we cannot neglect the conversation of resource. Am I adequately resourced as an individual? If I am not adequately resourced, who then do I need to align in order for this task at hand to be performed? What are the considerations that they will bring or they will make in order for this task to be performed? Some of these questions we cannot neglect. We cannot neglect, and it's very important. The resource question is the greatest determinant whether you're going to attain what you have set out for yourself. Any goal cannot be divorced from a resource. Any plan, any objective cannot be separated from a resource that is requisite, that will enable you to attain that task, to attain the level that you've set. Any plan will require a resource. Any goal will require a resource. Any ambition will require a resource. Usually we restrain the conversation around resources to only liquidity, money. There is much more to resources than money. Some of the resources are things that we bring in capacity, and we tend to look at how is this capacity helping me to transact as a resource. It's very important, and that's one of the greatest things about intellectual property. Intellectual property, in all of its forms and features, intellectual property is a resource. Intellectual property is a transactional resource. Intellectual property is a bargaining resource. Intellectual property is an investment resource. Intellectual property is a competitive resource. Intellectual property is a scaling resource, is a competitive advantage resource. Intellectual property is a resource that can take different form dependent with how aware the individual carrying that intellectual property is. Intellectual property can be that for you which you wish it to be. And it's very important. You cannot separate the place, the role, the contribution of a resource from the success of a plan. That is something very important. The fifth one is there must be an advisor for every aspect of task to be performed. It is very common that sometimes you might align all of these things, but you don't know how to bring them together. Sometimes it's very possible that you might have resources, you might have the why and the how and the what, but to bring them together, sometimes we fail in that. In any task that you wish to give yourself as an individual, you must have a person that advises. A person that has the capacity, the infrastructure to help you put things together, align things together, manage things together, administrate things together. As an individual, the affinity for success that you have is inversely proportional to the people who are advising you. The success, the rate, the degree, the percentage of success that all of us have sometimes can be drawn down, can be reduced to the amount of people with expertise, people with experience to talk to us, to advise us. It's very important that even as we look at what we wish to do for ourselves in 2023, what we wish to do for ourselves in business, what we wish to do for ourselves in career, what we wish to do for ourselves in our lives is inversely proportional to the people that we have. So in order for us to do and to invite someone to consider them as an advisor, we must be very conversant with our own selves. In what areas am I weak at? In what areas of my weakness am I sufficiently able to do something? In what areas of weakness can I not afford to move on having that weakness? It's very important that whenever we are looking at ourselves, whenever we are considering people to bring on, we must have those indicators. We must have those qualifications to be met at an individual level. This is where I am. These are my areas of inability. What I usually advise most of my students is very simple. Take a piece of paper regularly, once in a week or twice in a month, and constantly audit yourself. Constantly audit your individual progress. Constantly audit the developments you're making in career, the developments you're making at an individual level. Constantly audit. One of those things that you cannot neglect is that. So with these 5 things, there are high chances of success in everything that you're doing. With these 5 things, with these 5 important elements, there is no reason as to why a plan cannot succeed. But this is life. We cannot be too simplistic with life, but it is better that if we can just get these things aligned, if we can just get these 3 resources organized, then chances for you succeeding in any area of endeavor is very high. Chances of you prevailing in any area of human enterprise is very high. So just let me run down on this just for the sake of us just to get. We cannot separate success from planning. We cannot divorce, we cannot disconnect success from planning. But in order for that planning to qualify as something that is sound, similarly, we cannot afford to remove these 5 elements. 1, there must be a clarity of task at hand. There must be a clarity at an individual level. You must have that clarity. At corporate level, we must similarly have that clarity. We must have that clarity in all spheres of relationships that we appear. Whether it's in family, we must have that clarity. Whether it's in relationships, we must have that clarity. With your family, what do we want to do this year? Everyone must come on board and everyone must have that clarity. The kids must have their clarity at their levels. The parents must have their clarity at their levels. The relations around us must have clarity at their level as well. And that is very important. Secondly, there must be clarity of time allocation. That we must be very deliberate with time. And when we are approaching the conversation of time, we must be more than deliberately, we must place a demand on ourselves that this task must be performed within this time. And whenever we say that this task must be performed within this time, then the other question of standards must appear. What is the standards I've set for myself in performing this task? Most of us, we have standards when it comes to our personal space. We have standards in our personal space. But do we have standards, agreeable, acceptable standards as far as performance is concerned? To this, I will hold myself to this level. I will hold myself accountable to this level. I am my first accountability person. And constantly I need to do that. Is it daily? Do I review my accountability to myself daily? Do I review it weekly? What time have I set so that I can be accountable to myself? One of those things that we cannot similarly neglect is we cannot neglect the role of accountability to oneself. It's very important. The 4th one is there must be a consideration for resource. You cannot do anything under the earth without a resource. The greatest resource you have is yourself. The greatest resource you have is your time. The greatest resource you have is your reputation. The greatest resource you have is your skill set. The greatest resource you have are your relationships. The greatest resource you have are the things that life has advanced you. The greatest challenge is converting time into its equivalent money component. The greatest challenge is to convert a skill into its equivalent money component. The greatest challenge is to convert a reputation into its equivalent money component. You cannot divorce a plan from resources. You cannot divorce your success, your wish to succeed, and what level of resource that will take of you in order for you to succeed. That is very important. And the last one is all of us must have advisors. All of us must have advisors. Thank you so much. My name is Mr. Ogwang Omuga. I'm the principal at Franchise and Licensing Institute. We are the premier intellectual property advisory, consulting, research, valuation, and training firm in the African continent. We believe that intellectual property can do for us things that we have never imagined. Thank you so much. If you found this content valuable, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel. Let's comment at the comment section. Let's interact at the comment section. Tell me what you feel. Tell me what you feel. If there's something that you feel that I might have left out. Someone mentioned discipline. The putting together of this thing and even managing it is a silent way that you're disciplined as an individual. So discipline at times is one of those silent ingredients that in order for you even to do 1, 2, 3, 4, you must qualify at an individual that you're disciplined. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care. God bless, and bye-bye.